Hello again, doing another video on the same day. Why do I have so much energy? I will probably make a video tomorrow to tell you all about it because that will be day 3 on a certain kind of fast that I'm doing. So day 3 will be probably the best day to make the initial video about that. Can't wait to tell you about it. I'm feeling pretty good even though it's only at the beginning. Hold on, let me just decline this call. Okay. I would like to talk about how sensitives and those who maybe identify as heart source beings, sensitives is kind of a good umbrella term. Empaths, volunteers is another term for some people that kind of have a spiritual memory essence of incarnating here as a volunteer and as a sensitive heart source being. As usual, the words don't matter. I think we all get it if we're here, if we've tuned into something about heart source beings. And I want to talk about those of us who are living in the States, living in what I started calling Traumerica today. Just thinking about all the trauma that's come into my awareness, how widespread it is. I talked about it a lot this morning in my first video. I didn't even mean to go into it that much, but it is so relevant because the fact that something as simple as learning about the energetic resonance of emotions and feelings, the fact that we're so blocked off from grasping that better is just a huge indicator that there's trauma at all kinds of levels in all kinds of people. So for me, this is a result of the trauma culture that we're born into, and we're not the first generation born into it. It's several generations, at least anyway. And when we're born into a narrative that we acquire from our family and from our most trusted relationships, it's really hard to see when it might be actually violating us or be undermining our health. It's just so hard to believe because we grew up watching everyone around us, our parents, our grandparents, believing in these ideas about the system, the government, the culture itself, how some things were normalized that maybe shouldn't have been, but we didn't know any better because we are born into this generation after generation. So the topic is heart source beings. How can we thrive? And real quick, I just want to talk about bots. So I can't speak with any, knowledge and authority on whether or not synthetic or, inorganic people exist. I guess they could. When this was really on my radar a while back, with those eyes, I started seeing, bots everywhere and kind of putting that label on people whenever they would remind me of the descriptions that I'd been hearing about bots. And for me, even though that can totally be real, there's just, cloned people out there, there's synthetic beings, there's people that look and pretty much function like human beings, but they are not driven by a soul or a spiritual connection. They're more synthetically driven. So while that could totally be true, I think that it's a little easy to call someone a bot when you don't know the other reasons why they might be behaving that way, when you don't have the insight into what childhood trauma does to the developing brain and the developing self, and how that manifests in later life as being an automaton, being numb and disconnected, having low empathy, not having access to your feelings. So I think a lot of the people that probably get put in the bot category for people who are trying to figure out, what's going on with people, why are there all these crazy people, why are there these, zombie people, brainwashed people, am I, one of like 2% of people that are sane? Like, so it's, there are all kinds of explanations out there, but I'm really resonating with the early trauma response as a a way to manifest a whole society of bot-like, easy to control, compliant people. I have some notes I want to read from just to make sure that I get everything out that came to me, because I'm in a different mode when I'm flowing in my journal, and I'm more connected. I am kind of going into the left brain with, putting it into language, but it's on even another level when I'm presenting it and forming words and trying to stay speaking in my truth. But that also kind of takes me away from realizing that I'm forgetting some things that I wanted to get to. So I just want to say that I consider myself a heart source being, and I want to give just some hope and advice for other people that resonate with that and that feel like they're too sensitive for this culture, and that maybe even they get really down on themselves for that. So what has worked for me is growing back into my organic self, my authentic self, cleaning out all of the interference and all of the trauma responses that really just serve to be distortions. I put a lot of focus into purifying the interference as much as possible. This entails healing at the core, letting the narratives that once protected us from the reality of our, excuse me, sorry guys. Okay, I think I'm good, sorry. This entails healing at the core, letting the narratives that once protected us from the reality of our experiences of trauma be seen for the illusions they are. Having the courage to face the truth underneath the narrative. Trusting that it's only on the other side of fear that we discover our true self and reattune with our spiritual essence. So for me, that was stopping completely the business I was running, learning self-care, reprioritizing my life for health and wellness and inner balance. That is what put me on the spiritual journey. It was not even intended in the beginning to be a spiritual journey. I identified as an atheist for 7 years, maybe more. And when I went on my awakening journey, and when I was looking into health and I was looking into the low empathy of society, I was looking into how do we help the animals. Well, when I did that, that was a huge awakening for me. I mean, that was a shift. I mean, I don't know that that's where I was going with that when I started talking about it, but it's one of the things I wanted to mention was that me stopping all of the chaos of what I was doing in my, worldly narrative with my ego self, my image and whatever. When I stopped caring about that stuff so much, and I realized that, hold the phone, something fishy is going on here. I've got a lot more work to do than just these, crafty little things that I was doing. And what I feel like I need to do is actually lining up with this inner call that I've felt my whole life. So something about stopping that craziness and detaching from the narrative let new things come into my awareness, and that just continually grew. It was just expansion after expansion, and it wasn't like a purely neat, linear way out of the maze. It was going into a lot of cul-de-sacs and a lot of dead ends, and that's just how it goes. You have to learn. You learn what is pure and what does resonate by experiencing what doesn't, and it just keeps nudging us toward that. But it can't nudge us if we don't look at it, if we don't wake up to it, sense it, feel it, and recognize it. And if we have to do that with the awareness that we have in that, when we have that spiritual connection, that awareness, it doesn't have fear, so it isn't going to be wrapped up in a false narrative. It knows your sovereignty. So seeing the fear for its motives, which are to guard the inner temple that is the house of our soul. All of these fears that we have that block us off from wanting to truly feel, and from wanting to connect, and from being hopeful, from seeing the world as a safe place, they're like guards. They're like mind program guards that are there to keep us from accessing the power that is within, from getting that spiritual connection and being able to take charge of our own life, being able to even want to take charge of our own life for that matter. Looking at trauma being exposed at such epidemic proportions. Did I say exposed? I meant to say imposed. Looking at trauma being imposed at such epidemic proportions, and how it's hidden from the public's awareness as the clearly identifiable root cause of the later manifestations that serve to maintain the disattunement and control souls through illusion. This is a huge red flag, and it's, for me, visible now as a key component in the control system. It's the only thing that they aren't blaming. It's the only bug in our society that we aren't openly studying and investigating as a valid cause of all these major problems. We are conditioned through trauma into preferring ignorance and numbness. Not all of us, obviously, but I want to, take into account everyone that's out there. It's the most that some people can manage experiencing ignorance and numbness. Because they have a disorganized nervous system. They aren't able to participate and be openly receptive to things because they are, their nervous system is out of whack, their perceptions are distorted, they aren't able to have a good experience because everything just gets filtered through this crap, this fear. And likewise, they cannot break out of it. They can, but they feel like they can't. It's designed so that the hooks have, reverse facing barbs. When you try to pull out one of those fear hooks, it hurts. It is painful. It is scary. And really, you're lucky if you find someone that really gets it and can sit with you through that. But you do get through it. It's just realizing that you can. I'm here to give you confirmation. It can be done. So while there is a path to wholeness for everyone, the evidence of such a path is invisible to traumatized receptors. We think that the world is not to be trusted, it's to be avoided. Keep your head down and stay in line. But when an individual gets fed up with their resulting adult trauma response condition, when they can't tolerate the failed relationships and addictions anymore, the path will appear with eyes ready to see it. There has to be something more than this life of constant stress, constant isolation, constant setback, constant sense of failure. Is this ringing a bell with anybody? It's being ready to face one's own responsibility in the self-regulation that unlocks the transmutation process. I'll say that again. It's being ready to face one's own responsibility in self-regulation that unlocks the transmutation process. It's being the responsible caregiver that you didn't have. It's healing the core wounds of our childhood. It's reorganizing the mind to perceive our true sovereignty beyond our worldly experiences. It's letting go of inner scripts of helplessness. I know that they feel completely true. That is the nature of the child's mind, absorbing the silent programming. This abuse and disattunement is a core crime committed against us. Now let's look at why don't our parents attune? Why are there so many disattuned parents? Why is there such a prominence of the home environment that lacks a secure attachment with a caregiver? It's highly likely that they were not securely attuned to as children. So they do not know about nor recognize the virtue of caregiver attunement. They don't even understand what is transpiring in the experience of that secure attachment. They only know the narrative which they were born into. Spare the rod, spoil the child. I've heard people in my own family say that. And they naively use the narrative to justify their low awareness behavior. So it's not about blame, it's about healing. Healing ourselves and healing the collective mind from its destructive interferences. The trauma in the home environment is what's shaping our cities and filling our prisons. It's feeding the system like nothing else. But when we as individuals find a safe space to honestly reflect, we can begin our healing. With the support of others who are aware of the social and cultural narratives lacking authentic humanity, we can learn so much simply by connecting and seeing the spiritual essence in each other, detaching from labels and diagnoses, and just being. When we connect with our inner stillness, the narratives shut down like they were blasted with an EMP. Fear has no place to exist. Our better judgment and higher discernment becomes accessible. Here we are commander, here we are balanced and attuned to our true nature. This is a practice in choosing wellness, in choosing the truth, and in choosing to be present. The world can be painful, terrifying, and brutally unforgiving, and we each only know how it feels to be on our path of experience, to have our memories, our traumas, and our perceptual distortions. That's why it's up to the individual to journey into the inner life, as scary as it seems. The system wants you to stay in your learned narrative of worthlessness. It wants you to be so afraid of your shadow aspects that you seek ways to numb them as a way of life, that you numb out as a way of life. And so you teach your kids the same poor coping skills and breed another generation of disconnected and easily controllable people. The system employs trauma to prevent us from accessing the inner life with any grasp or empowerment. We thrive by seeing the crimes that have been committed and using that knowledge to recognize our unhealed wounds and faulty perspectives. We thrive by living in our truth, which may get ugly as it's surfacing through decades of shit and lies and delusion. But anytime you clean out a closet, you start with a huge mess, an explosion of forgotten crap, and it needs to be sorted. The bad programs and trauma responses need to be looked at. Like a pair of shoes that no longer suits you, they need to be discarded. So this is an analogy for like having some evidence of a core trauma, but not wanting to look at it, something that might turn out to be forgotten incest. Not wanting to clean out that closet because of the explosion mess that is in that first stage of cleaning. That's, not a good enough reason to just keep blocking out something that really just is rooted in every setback that you're having, most likely. So do stick with it, and your authentic self will continually emerge and empowerment will become a reality. If you can, work with a counselor or a support group. Realize that we're all climbing out of a dirty cage, and compassion is the energy we need to become reacquainted in order to heal ourselves and each other. We activate access and connection to our spirit self when we open up the inner journey and we feel again. We can't heal it if we can't feel it. When we are unblocked, we can hear the voice of our higher calling. We remember the beauty within us, the unblossomed soul aching to come out. It begins to emerge. Our false perceptions about our worth have fucked with us long enough. These perceptions are the layers of fear that we must transcend. We must strive for the awareness that lets us own our emotional state and our reactions. Being able to see a wound means being able to heal it. So don't be afraid to look. Know that you, as a heart source being, are so worthy and so valuable to this environment. Its rejections are systematic and they are designed to keep you traumatized. The good thing is that we know better. We still have our senses, or we are waking up to them. We're waking up to discordance. We're waking up to things not lining up. And we know that when we don't have this interference, we are so much better than this. We know it, and we just have to take the steps toward owning it. Not worrying about what other people think, or the labels, or how this system has made us feel rejected. That means nothing in the face of reclaiming your sovereignty. So to my fellow sensitives out there, this is the path to healing that. It's not about losing your sensitivity. It's about using it as a way to discern and to learn. All right, thank you guys.